for this artifact, this will be some basic computer setup, assembly, configuration, and troubleshooting. So long story short, the gentleman I work with brought in this laptop. He said the hard drive died. He replaced it, but it won't recognize the hard drive. So got it plugged in. This is an older machine, an older Dell Precision M6500. Not really sure what year that came out, but judging by the weight of this thing, it is pretty dated. So we're going to try to boot it up, look at the BIOS, and see what's going on. See if we can stop this memory test. So I'm repeatedly hitting F12 to bring up the BIOS here in Dell. And having powered this thing on once previously, it is a little temperamental. This thing killed the test. And I did hear the CD drive spinning up, so that probably isn't helping our speed up, depending on whatever the boot order is. So yeah, as expected, there's the OS disk. Alright. So now in theory we should be able to take a look at the BIOS, see if it sees anything connected, see what the boot options are listed as, and that might help us figure out what the issue is here. Alright, quick update. You can see the, the view has changed slightly, but I think I have found the original problem. Now, the reason why we're not staring at a BIOS screen right now is because it just displayed the one blinking line and decided not to go to the BIOS for whatever reason. But I found the culprit as to why it doesn't think that there's a hard drive in there. As you can see, the user put this hard drive in, but it's not really fastened to anything, and it's just moving around lackadaisically. If we can get it out of there. Maybe. Okay. So, there we go. There's the drive they wanted to install. Now it looks like there's two bays here, which I think I will try to install in this one, because looking inside of this bay, I don't know if you can see that, but the connection is on the top side of this mount, and that's why I think he believed it was seated, because it was sliding underneath it. So we're going to try to install it in this internal bay, and if not, I think I can get it to go into this bay. We've made a little bit of headway. If you recall at the beginning, towards the front of the system, was where that hard drive was laying in loosely, and then there was a secondary drive slot. I was able to install it in there, but it doesn't see a boot drive. So we're going to try to go to the setup utility and see what it tells us. So, okay, well, that's a good sign. We made it to the BIOS. Let's go to boot sequence. Okay, so since we were able to install the drive into the secondary drive location, we're going to change up the boot order. And we're going to make it the second internal drive will be its first point of boot. And then, since we're going to be booting from OEM Media, this Windows 10 disk, we'll make that our secondary boot sequence option. We'll apply that, we'll restart, and see what happens from there. We should get the Windows screen no fine, or just fine, excuse me. And at that point, we should be able to select that second internal hard drive as what we can boot Windows to, and then we'll be back in mostly working order. I would ideally probably run some configs after this, just to see what the status of the other components are. But let's see what happens with this. So apply those, we'll exit. And this thing is notoriously slow. So, what should happen, okay, yeah, I didn't see that you can boot something from there. Now our disk drive is spinning up, so that's to be expected. Alright. So at this point in the video, unfortunately the audio from the GoPro decided to no longer register. So I'll narrate the rest of this. We've got a generic Windows prompt, which is telling us what language you'd like to install and just some generic options. So as we set those, we'll go ahead and continue through that. And that was the hard drive bay from where it would not seek correctly, where the drive was installed the first time. As I stated earlier, I was able to install that drive into a secondary bay, as that first bay was missing a spacer underneath to keep it locked in place. So now it's asking us if we want to install now. So Windows is saying that there is a location to install Windows, and we'll kind of just get this through its process and going, and we'll be done with this artifact. Okay, so right now it's asking us for a Windows activation key. Now, it says you can skip this. If I remember correctly, from when I did this video, I just skip it for now, and then I input it later. Now, this is an interesting point. Something you'll have to make sure you look at if you have an older version of Windows that came with a license installation card, it will tell you what specific iteration and flavor of Windows 10 that you have. And you can see that on the card that we had home. So we're going to go ahead and go next. Because if we don't select home, the activation key will not correlate to it, and we will likely have some issues. All right, so we'll agree to the terms. And it's asking us, do we want to do a custom install, or do we want to do an upgrade? Since we're doing it from scratch, we'll do a custom install. And it sees our drive and where we want to install Windows to. So the drive install was a success. We can see it's our 1 terabyte drive. We have it selected, so we can hit next. And at this point, we can see that Windows is installing on the new drive. And this does take quite a bit of time. So for the sake of this video being as short as possible, we'll go ahead and cut it off here. But just quick follow-up. At the end of the video, Windows did launch successfully, asked for an activation key, and everything was good to go.